Good morning, brethren. Welcome to another daily devotional. We're going to think this morning in relation to the 10th commandment about the rationale behind this commandment. Why is it wrong to covet what other people have? Well, I want to suggest to you that there are two main reasons. We know that the law of God is more or less divided into two sections. First of all, the first 4 commandments that have to do with our attitude towards God, and then the other commandments that have to do with regards to our attitude towards our fellow man, towards our neighbour. And one of the things that the second table of the law is based upon, something that is taught in other parts of the Word of God, is that we have a duty before God to love our fellow man, to love our neighbour as ourselves. Now, in this command that we're thinking about, commandment number 10, it has to do with coveting what belongs to our neighbour. If we truly loved our neighbour, then instead of being jealous of what they have, instead of craving what they have for ourselves, we instead would be rejoicing in and thankful to God that they have been so wonderfully blessed. They might have lots more than us. They might be far more gifted than us. Their circumstances in life might be more satisfying than ours. But we must never adopt an attitude of being jealous and envious of them and coveting what they have. To do so is not to love our neighbour. Sin has so affected us that the reality is that our mind and our heart have been affected by sin to such an extent that it affects the way we think, it affects the way we feel. And if the truth be told, more often than not, rather than rejoicing in our neighbours or in other people's successes, rejoicing in the blessings that they have, instead of that, we tend to resent them. We tend to become envious. We tend to think, why couldn't I have that? Why has God not given me the success they have? That, friends, is one of the reasons why this command is given. It reminds us we are meant to love our neighbours. And if we truly loved people, we would not be coveting what they have. But there's an even more important reason as to why we are not to covet. It underlies this 10th commandment, and that is that if we are coveting what other people have, that coveting is in fact a demonstration of our lack of faith and trust in God and our dissatisfaction with what God in His providence has given us. The Bible teaches us that God will provide for all our needs. The psalmist says, God will withhold no good thing from those who walk uprightly. We believe that God is sovereign, and in His providence, He orders every aspect of all of our lives. Now, if that's the case, to covet something that we do not have and that has been granted to someone else is to demonstrate, albeit in our hearts or in our minds, to demonstrate dissatisfaction with God's providence and with God's goodness towards us. It's to say, I'm not happy with what God has given me. I want something more. And that is to demonstrate a lack of faith and trust and satisfaction and contentment in God. Instead of being thankful for what God has given us and accepting that God in his goodness and wisdom has chosen not to give us certain things, the person who is covetous in effect is saying, I'm not happy with God. I'm not happy with what he has given me. He should have given me more. Friends, these are the two reasons that underlie this commandment. We're not to covet because we're meant to love our neighbour. We're not to covet because we are meant to graciously accept and be thankful for all that God has given us, even if what he has given us in our eyes seems to be less than what he has given to others. So let us think then about this commandment in this context. I am to love my fellow man, therefore I ought not to covet what he or she has. I am to be content with what God has given me, therefore I should not covet what other people have. May God grant that we might reflect upon these things and that God will use it to help us to be more content than discontent. Have a good day, folks. Every blessing.